I am Seraphina, the great Shang guardian goddess, who descended to earth in the divine ascension tribulation to repay her kindness and become the empress of the Shang dynasty. But after 7 years of marriage, Alexander took in 3,000 little demons into his palace and ordered me to offer celestial plumes to help them ascend to human form into human beings. When I was down to my last celestial plumes, he wanted to take a fox demon as his consort. On the night I went into labor, I stayed up all night sewing a wedding dress for the fox demon. But on the day I entered the palace, the fox demon thought the pink wedding garment was bad luck and tore it up in public, stripping off my skin to make the wedding garment. I lost all my cultivation and vomited blood, but Alexander laughed and applauded as if he were watching a play. What's so great about a goddess? She's still a bald bird. I don't believe it. The great Xuan has lasted for thousands of years. Without the guardian goddess, will the country die? I was unconscious, but he wrapped his arms around the fox demon and hung his feathered clothes in opulent feasting halls to admire them. When I woke up again, I was disheartened and knelt in front of goddess Nuwa. 7 years have come and gone, and the favor that my disciple owes to the Shang dynasty is paid off. The Shang dynasty has run out of gas. I begged Nuwa to order Zhou to send troops to destroy the Shang. Nuwa pondered for a long time and sighed. Originally you wanted to come down to earth to repay the favor. I did not allow it. Divine ascension tribulation is imminent. The Shang dynasty should have died. Why do you have to go against the heavens? But you have been stubborn for so many years. The king of Shang married you as the queen. The couple is in love. I also thought that there is a good result. How did it come to this? Her gaze was compassionate. Sun Yan, have you ever had a moment of regret? Obviously the Seraphina that the Shang king saved when he was young was you. Yet you couldn't be honest with him about your identity. For so many years, the Shang king searched for beauties all over the world. Wasn't it the Seraphina of that year that he was looking for? My heart stung and I slowly bowed my head. Disciple has no regrets. It's just that it's time to leave. Before you say goodbye, confess your identity to him. Nuwa ordered someone to summon Alexander. When the courtiers returned, I still couldn't help but go to see if he had come yet. But the only thing that was thrown over to me hidden was a sarong stained with a fishy odor. The king is at revelry in the banquet hall with noble consort Su, and asked the slave girl to bring noble consort's nightgown. The empress has the best embroidery. The king ordered you to mend it and send it to the wine pool at noon this night. I smelled the foul odor of the fox demon's body, and my stomach rolled. Blood rushed up, and tainted blood spilled from the corners of my mouth. Raising my eyes, I smiled bitterly. There's no need to let him know. Nuwa revealed her intolerance. You have given so much for the Shang king. How long can you live without your celestial wings and cultivation? That's just it. The phoenix will come to pick you up tomorrow. As soon as the words fell, Alexander's own guards walked in with their swords on their sides and an arrogant face. Before he even saluted, he carved a lewd poem on the pillar. The king has heard that goddess Nuwa has manifested herself and has ordered me to come and offer a poem. Nuwa was so enraged that her divine power shook the entire Nuwa temple. But the proctor still wore a disdainful yet lecherous smile. The king said that if goddess Nuwa wants to enter the palace, she can instantly abolish the queen and re-establish her. Shut up! I snapped. The personal guard glanced at me. Noble consort Su has ordered you to serve and wash her feet. Please hurry and get ready. After saying that, he left in large strides. Nuwa spoke coldly. Originally, I thought that the ancestors of the great Shang were benevolent, and that the Shang dynasty would not perish. Now it seems that the extermination of the Shang is inevitable. Sun Yan, you will leave tomorrow, and Seraphina's identity doesn't need to be confessed. I obediently nodded my head. Walking out of the Nuwa temple, the temple built for me next to it had fallen into disrepair and collapsed. Back then, I descended to earth to marry Alexander as a goddess and was held in the palm of his hand and cared for. The love story of the goddess and the king of Xuan was sung throughout the capital, and Alexander even built me countless temples, with sacred offerings constantly. Alexander stroked my hair with gratitude and tenderness. Nian Nian, you are the salvation of the great Shang, and my salvation as well. At that time, even the most tiring and bitter days were sweet. But then, Alexander changed his temperament overnight. Not only did he feast all day, he also took 3,000 concubines. He emptied the treasury and built opulent feasting halls, and when the pools were completed, he cut my hands and feet and bled into the pools. I begged him weakly to let me go. But he just laughed coldly. Sun Yan, who are you to beg me to let go? When you forced Seraphina to die, did you ever think of sparing her? Have you ever thought of telling me the truth when you watched me searching for her for years? Everyone knows that Seraphina was the only warmth of my youth. It was you. Killed her. I explained over and over again that the letter was a fake. But he got angrier and angrier each time and thought I was a liar. Alexander never roomed with me again, but the harem was filled with more and more little demons every day. In almost every corner of the palace, you can see him having sex with women. I was tired of explaining myself and wanted to leave, but I realized I had his child in my womb, which the imperial astrologer predicted would be the future lord of Shang. When the baby was born, Alexander was overjoyed and crowned him royal amnesty. The ice between us melted and he came to see me and the prince every day, saying he had decided to forget Seraphina and start over with me. The prince grew up every day, and he taught him, and we were together as husband and wife. I thought the storm had passed and it would be sunny days from now on. But the fox demon came to the palace and brought news of Seraphina. 2. Vixen, the fox demon, said that Seraphina was lucky that I didn't force her to die, but she survived. Vixen brought Seraphina's handwritten letter, which Alexander held dearly, but I didn't understand. Obviously I am Seraphina. Why would a fake Seraphina appear? Obviously I have been married to Alexander for many years, but he still only wants to believe in a strange fox demon, not a pillow. After reading the letter, Alexander smashed my phoenix seal in public, pointing at me and saying he wanted to repudiate his wife. I sat frozen in place, covering the prince's ears and going cold. For the sake of fake Seraphina, he hurt me over and over again. In desperation, the crown prince cried out in panic. He paused and lifted his hand to tear the letter of repudiation. After that day, he sealed the fox demon as Princess Sue and never came to see me or the crown prince again. 1,000 thoughts terminated. I wiped my tears and smiled at the oncoming crown prince. The king has orders to ask the empress to disrobe. The maidservant behind me lifted her foot and kicked me to the ground. Alexander wrapped his arms around Vixen and sat on the top with his sash wide open to watch the show like a spectator. There were even countless guards around staring intently at my ripped sash. The crown prince violently pushed away the maidservant and blocked in front of me. Scram! Who dares to touch my mother? Alexander's face, however, bristled with gloom as he took large strides in front of him. You haven't even become the king of Shang yet. And you dare to talk to your father like this? What if this king just kills her now? The crown prince was kicked off by him and smashed against the screen and fainted. Blood spread under his tiny body. I called out for the imperial doctor, but everyone looked at Alexander's eyes and didn't dare to move. Why are you pretending to be pathetic? If you hadn't gone to Nuwa and complained, how could Vixen have been chastised by her? Don't be quick to apologize. I lost a lot of blood. My eyes went black for a while, and I was weak. But I stiffly stood up and was unwilling to kneel down. Alexander was a bit surprised, and a trace of trance and nostalgia flashed in his eyes. But soon, he became cold as ice again. Don't think that by learning Seraphina you can escape punishment. Vixen is so seriously injured. You just lose this worthless life is not enough. I looked up at the small, almost healed cuts on the back of Vixen's hand. Wry smile, what wound under my shirt wasn't several times as long as hers. But Alexander never cared, and didn't even allow the eunuchs to bandage my wounds to heal them. With endless disappointment, I turned to leave, only to be stopped by Alexander. He stared at the bloody clothes on my body and frowned. Why didn't you use mana to heal your wounds? They'll have the imperial doctor take a look at you and the crown prince later. I woodenly picked up the crown prince. There's no more mana. Alexander, however, misunderstood. Are you that selfish? You didn't want to help Vixen become immortal, so you got Nuwa to hide your mana, right? And now you come to me to sell yourself short, not even caring about the death of your own son. Sun Yen, you disgust me. Alexander takes everything for granted. In order to repay my kindness, I should help offer everything I have and fulfill all his demands. In order to find Seraphina, he searched for many small demons and asked me to expend my cultivation to help them ascend to human form just to ask for Seraphina's trail. Without celestial plumes, I can no longer fly, and I only have a few years left to live. But he said, "You're a goddess. How could anything happen to you?" Once upon a time, I cried over and over again, defending myself only to be rewarded with even more unbridled solicitude and indifference. Isn't it still alive? Sun Yen, are you tired of being so miserable? I raised my head and smiled instead of anger. Yes. I'm just cheap and disgusting. Alexander also notices that something is wrong, pushes Vixen away and stands up wanting to chase me, but stops with a sneer as he walks to the door. Almost got you again. Returning to my chambers, I handed the crown prince over to the eunuch. When I went in again, I only saw empty beds. Vixen's maid smiled harshly at me. Your Highness, don't worry. Your consort invited the crown prince to the palace as a guest, and he will definitely be sent back at dusk. Along with her voice, the child's shrill screams came from the noble consort's palace. I glared at the maid, my eyes bloodshot. When I stumbled and ran to the noble consort's palace, the crown prince was covered in charred blackness and tied to a red-hot iron pole, screaming in agony. My eyes went black and my knees knocked out white bones on the ground. Alexander, let him go, please. Fabian will die. He's your son too. Alexander signaled his maidservant to help me up. He made a mistake. He deserves to be punished. This time is just a small punishment. If you as a mother don't educate, then only this king can come. As the queen, you have to be decent. His eyes were cold. As if the dying was not his own flesh and blood, he also advised me to be lenient. Where is your bloodline? How could he die so easily like a mortal? After being punished, you can just heal his wounds immediately. Vixen is this king's noble consort. That is his little mother. He disrespected little mother and almost pushed Vixen into the water. He should have been punished. I was pressed against the seat. My heart was like a knife, hissing with all my might that Yuer was just a mortal, just a child. How could a mortal push a fox demon with demonic powers? But Alexander doesn't want to think about it. He just wants to take it out on his favored concubine. The crown prince has long been unrecognizable, charred black as a corpse, weakly calling out to his father to save his life. Alexander then moved a little, just about to signal the people to save the crown prince, but the fox demon sealed with his lips. Children always have to suffer. How can they learn without pain? The gold and silver treasures on her body jingled when she was in the throes of love, and the wealth and glory of the entire great merchant was concentrated in one place. The Western tribute fruits on the table Vixen does not love to eat, but only rely on them to emit a fruity aroma to cover the pungent smell of burnt and blood. Every single one of them is something I have never gotten before. Even at the wedding, I only wore a plain silver hairpin. Alexander said that the great Shang natural disasters are frequent. The treasury is empty, and cannot be wasteful. I believe it. But it turns out that I'm just not worthy. It was me who thought that even if I could only hide my identity, even if I got to know him again, Alexander would still be able to guess that I was the little Serafina of that year, and it was my wishful thinking that by relying on my own strength, I would be able to act against the heavens and save the fate of the great merchant and him. It was me who overestimated Alexander's love. Tears slid down my cheeks as I was pressed into the seat and watched as Xuan gradually lost his breath. It was clear that we were only a few hours away from getting out of here, but Vixen killed him. A wave of hatred swept through my heart as I desperately tried to break free of my restraints, pulling off my hairpin and pouncing on Vixen. Vixen's cheek was cut by me, deep enough to be seen on the bone. The momentary heartache in Alexander's eyes was replaced by anger. Harpy. He clutched my wrist and slammed my whole body on the ground. Isn't it just a dead child? Don't think I don't know that you immortals are all capable of living and dying. What's the point of pretending? I wanted to tell him and question him why. But under the grief, my throat felt like it was blocked by the bloodstains on the ground, and I could only let out a hiss that was not a sentence. Alexander took a few steps forward, wiped away my tears of blood and comforted me softly. Vixen is just disciplining me a little bit, and didn't expect it to be like this, or this child is too fragile. Sun Yen, you go back to heal first, or your own body is important. What happened just now? It was me who was angry and hard. I apologize to you. Your consort made a big mistake, so how about being demoted to consort status? I slapped him hard and picked up Xuan's tiny body. For so many years, for the sake of this child, I endured everything to guard Dashang. Just thinking, I can't let him become the crown prince of a fallen country. But now, with Xuan dead, what does Great Shang have to guard? Then how about being demoted to concubine Su? Looking at Alexander's slightly apologetic face, I sarcastically laughed out loud. What concubine Su? I, the Empress, asked to be demoted myself. You might as well make her the Empress. Anyway, the Great Shang is going to die. I don't know how I walked back to my bedchamber. I only know that when I woke up again, the injuries on my body had been gently medicated. Xuan's injuries were covered with makeup and powder. Lying quietly beside me, Alexander gauntly guarded my bedside, holding my hand and comforting me softly. We'll still have children in the future. The Great Shang will not die. We will still have a new crown prince. I expressionlessly pushed him away, and anger surfaced on his face. Sun Yen, how much longer will you be capricious? I've gone soft on you like this. What more do you want? Is it possible to make Vixen pay for his life? Can't I? I asked rhetorically. He was dumbfounded, but Vixen walked in and took him by the arm. Your Majesty, look who's here. A woman who looked very similar to me walked in from outside the hall and smiled faintly at him. Yen Zhou. I am Serafina Celine. Alexander was stunned. You've come back, but I'm going to fail you. Back then, I said I would marry you as a queen and give birth to a prince. But now, Vixen, however, smiled mysteriously and pulled the two of them to the side hall to sit down. My ears were superb and I clearly heard them discussing. The king needs the divine maiden's child, but wants to have a child with Celine. Why don't we dig out the divine core and cellular palace of the goddess in exchange for Celine? Just so I have a party of secret medicine right here. In this way, Celine will fly up in place and the king will be able to have the crown prince. Alexander was a bit hesitant, but couldn't resist Celine's tears. In the end, he was the only one who returned to the bedchamber with the medicine. I was out of mana and even less powerful than the man, so I could only avoid it by looking away. But he twisted my chin and force-fed me. Once upon a time, when he saw that I was afraid of the bitter medicine, he would specially ask the eunuchs to research sweet-flavored medicinal soup. Now, I was forced out of tears by the bitterness, but he didn't give an extra look. The medicine hadn't yet taken effect, so he gave me an apologetic look and turned to leave. The next thing I know, Celine walks in, watching with amusement as I roll over in pain. How's it feel to have your divine core and symbol hardened, with your identity on top? Everyone will treat me with respect. Even your husband will love only me. You don't know, do you? The prince didn't actually die from branding iron punishment. It was my sister Vixen who, bite by bite, ate his soul. That boy even called out for his mother before his soul disintegration. Worthy of being Seraphina's son. The soul is truly a great tonic. Sister Vixen's enchantment has been enhanced so much that now, the merchant king will only be even more dead to us. My body trembled. My sanity collapsed. And I burned my soul just to die with her. A formation, however, rose from around the bed and couch, an invisible binding splitting my soul into several pieces. Luckily this king was prepared for this. Otherwise you would have to really use your mana to kill someone. Alexander's face was as cold as frost. Can a god immortal kill people at will? Xuan, how did you become so vicious and scary? She killed the crown prince. She killed Yuer. I roared, pain racking every nerve. It was the heart that hurt the most. Xuan, for the sake of a child. How much longer do you have to be calculating? Concubine Sue is kind by nature. How could she kill someone? You're really out of your mind. After saying that, he ordered someone to close the door of the temple tightly. Let me reflect for 3 days and 3 nights. It was pitch black, and in the midst of severe pain, my body felt as if it had been hollowed out, and my body had unconsciously transformed into a featherless bird. Divine core and the cellular palace had been exchanged for Celine. The phoenix transformed into its original form and landed on the eave of the house. And a gentle force dragged me to her back. I buried my head between the warm fluff. Tears came out of my eyes. Alexander reunited with Celine. Naturally 100 times. Do not go to the court, and she tangled with a week before remembering me. He looked for guards to find, but learned that the harem no one has seen me. My bedchamber has been occupied by Celine. He rushed to but froze outside the temple. Xuan is dead. And Deshan will be our sister's world from now on. No one will ever find out that you are in disguise again. The king of Shine is handsome and I have adored him for a long time. Xuan is a goddess and can't squarely marry Alexander as a Seraphina goddess. I, however, don't have to worry about it and can claim my identity to be with the Shang king for a long time. Alexander listened incredulously, but another urgent report from the front line came to his ears. Your Majesty, it's not good. The front line is in an emergency. The seraphic barrier that has been guarding the Great Shang for 100 years has disappeared, and our army is losing ground. Zhou House army has almost reached the capital. 5. Alexander stiffened and turned back. The voices both inside and outside the temple transformed into a sharp knife, piercing deep into his heart. Celine was still talking proudly, and the shrewd meanness in her words was what Alexander hated the most. Your Majesty, the front line is in an emergency. Please give the order to reinforce it immediately. The attendant was urging again. A fire rushed to his heart. He hammered the wall angrily. Vixen and Celine appeared at the sound of his voice. Seeing the wound on his hand, they immediately surrounded him painfully. Vixen bandaged his hand, but he indifferently avoided it. Celine's eyes sank, but she still pampered him as usual. But Alexander no longer ate the set, pinched her neck and questioned. I ask you, in the end, who is Seraphina? Where is Xuan? Celine was so scared that her face turned pale. Her hands desperately slapped his arm. Vixen gulped and leaned into Alexander's embrace with courage. The king knows everything. The two of us sisters by no means have bad intentions. We just want to help the king see Seraphina again and fulfill our regrets. Since Xuan doesn't want to recognize her, and the king only has disgust for her, it would be better to let the one who truly loves you as Seraphina to accompany you forever. Disgust. Alexander stiffened. His hands loosened and he mumbled. Celine smoothly also said, why should the king be angry over a small matter? Everything Celine did was because she adored the king. Is there anything wrong with love? Love. Alexander slowly looked up. His eyes red. It was as if his heart was being held on a scale, sinking a little bit into the abyss. Celine was relieved to see that he didn't react. She then said that the Shang king had no affection for Sun Yan, but loved them sisters to the bone. Sun Yan had been married to the Shang king for 7 years and had gotten nothing. On the other hand, their palace had a stream of gold and silver treasures sent in, and the king had spent a huge amount of money to build Starscraper Tower, just to prove his love to the heavens. How could such love be shaken by the death of a woman? Thinking of this, Celine squeezed out a few more tears. The only thing Celine did wrong in her life was to fall in love with the king. From then on, she fell in love and defied the odds. But the king today, fortunately, the king always still has me in his heart. As long as I have your love, I am willing to die. She cried like a pear, Alexander's favorite look from before. But now, when he looked at Celine, he only felt ridiculous. Why did his former self recognize the wrong person? And how could Serafina look false and disgusting in front of his eyes? She should be like Sun Yan, always standing silently behind him, gentle and quiet. She should be like Sun Yan, soft and tough, for a love to wait for a lifetime. Thinking of this, Alexander pushed Celine away and walked out the door. I'm going to find her, king. Celine called out to him from behind. You and Sun Yan have long since had no future. All you love is the Serafina in your memories. I'm more like Sun Yan than Sun Yan. Why are you leaving? Alexander didn't turn around. Your Majesty, aren't you the one who loathes her the most? You were the one who said that her high and mighty godlike appearance was annoying, and you were the one who drove her to her death. She won't die. She's a fairy. How could a fairy die? Alexander didn't want to believe it. She was just angry with me and left home. As long as Fabian lives, she'll definitely forgive me. The more he said, the brighter his eyes became, and finally he almost hissed. Someone come, dig up Fabian. As long as Fabian can come back to life, she'll be able to see the sincerity of my repentance. Celine says, how can a mortal die and be resurrected? Alexander's eyes are scarlet and horrible. Mortal. How can Fabian be immortal? He thought of his brutal behavior in the daytime, and his face suddenly paled. Obviously, Sun Yan begged him to let Yuer go, saying that Yuer was just a mortal. However, it was as if he had been taken all of his mind by Vixen, and he only found Sun Yan's cries disturbing. He habitually thinks that Sun Yan is a god. How could a god die? But he forgot that the celestial plumes that carried Sun Yan's cultivation had already been plucked out one by one. The night the last celestial plumes were pulled down, Sun Yan lost all his magic power and became immortal. And he held the newly crowned noble consort, feeling only the cries of the child and the wailing noises of labor. 6. Thinking of this, Alexander was in severe pain. It turns out that all the harm she has suffered was caused by me. I was the one who hurt her recklessly on the basis of favor. On the basis that she couldn't reject me. He turned to leave, but his heart was filled with Sun Yan. He remembered Sun Yan's gentle smile when he was newly married, and remembered the grief of Sun Yan standing in front of the palace gates when noble consort entered the palace. He walked faster and faster, muttering under his breath. In front of the Niwa temple, he knelt in reverence, only begging the empress to be gracious and tell him about Sun Yan's trail. But no matter how much he begged, knocking his forehead and bleeding all over the place, the statue of Niwa still gazed at him icily, as if in mockery. Alexander ordered his attendants to sacrifice living slaves, almost staining the entire temple red with blood. Alexander hissed and recklessly cut open his arms and legs, blood pouring out. Despair and madness filled his brain. Why can't we get her back? Won't even give me a chance to redeem myself. Can't I even say an apology to her? Niwa finally appeared in midair with a cold expression. After all this, Sun Yan is disillusioned with you and with the entire Great Shang. She is unwilling to see you, even if Sun Yan is not Seraphina. She has guarded the great merchant for you for many years. But you were heartless and hurt her deeply. Nuo waved her hand, and the Book of Peace and Separation landed in Alexander's hand. Today, the two of you make peace, and you don't have to look for it again in the future. Alexander held the Book of Reconciliation. The always strong man burst into tears. I want divorce. It was only now that he remembered Sun Yan's goodness. She was Seraphina, the patron saint of the Great Shang. When she was there, no one harassed the borders of the Great Shang. The generals were brave. And the people Celine had a bountiful harvest. Obviously divine ascension tribulation is imminent. Natural and man-made disasters continue. Obviously he recklessly spends money, but Deshang is flourishing. Behind everything is Sun Yan's payment. Alexander has never been so awake to realize. Alexander has never been so conscious of the fact that not only is he inseparable from Sun Yan, but so is big business. He tore up the Book of Peace and Separation and pushed down the Nuwa temple. So what if Nuwa? You can't say anything unless Sun Yan tells me to my face that she doesn't want me anymore. Otherwise, she will always be my queen. Celine chased after him. I also have magical powers. I can also help the king guard Deshang, but he kicked her hard. Get lost. He was fuming to find someone, even disregarding Zhou House army that had hit the national capital. Forcibly ordering all soldiers and generals to search the country for me. For 3 whole days and 3 nights, there was not a single piece of news. Everyone told him that Sun Yan was dead. How can she be alive after being injured so badly and without her divine core? Turning into a mortal, Alexander knew that she wouldn't die. She just refused to show up. So he desperately tried to prove to the king that she was dead. So he desperately tried to prove his remorse with his actions. He dismissed his harem and got a warlock to refine the divine core of all the lesser demons into a golden elixir, which he wanted to offer to Sun Yan as compensation. He filled in the wine pools, burned down the meat forest, and passed out in Sun Yan's bedchamber all day. Your Majesty, it's not good. Concubine Su and Miss Celine stole golden elixir and Queen Mother's divine core and ran away. Alexander stood up, a murderous intent around him that couldn't be dispersed. Get them back for me, at all costs. 7. The commotion in the mortal world was so great that despite Phoenix's best efforts to keep it a secret, I knew about it. Alexander was mad. The soldiers and generals of the Zhou dynasty are almost hitting the capital of the country, and most of the soldiers of the Great Shang have thrown themselves into the Zhou army. Even many ministers have dragged their families away. In such a difficult situation, he didn't do anything. Instead, he drove more slaves to build Starscraper Tower higher and higher. On the top floor of Starscraper Tower, there is my divine core dug out from Celine's body, and the valuable golden elixir, which emits soft light day and night. Both Vixen, the fox demon, and Celine have been captured and locked in Starscraper Tower like dogs with special trapped demon locks. Each day, Alexander himself would cut them into 1,000 pieces. Hanging on for dear life with the finest medicines, they were executed again the next day. The two wailed loudly throughout the capital, half dead for 4 days. On the 4th day, which was also the 7th day of Zhou's attack on Shang, the capital broke. Phoenix and I took advantage of the chaos and came to Starscraper Tower to retrieve the divine core. Just as we landed, I heard a familiar voice from behind me. Sun Yan, you finally came back to see me. Alexander, who was supposed to be in the battlefield, stood on the opposite side, wearing the most gorgeous clothes and smiling. I knew that you wouldn't abandon me. Nian, we can still start over, right? I looked at him with silence and indifference. Phoenix rolled his eyes. What a lunatic. If your ancestor knew that you abandoned the Great Shang dynasty like that, he probably wouldn't be able to press the coffin board. Alexander hooked up his lips. What would I want with a river and mountain without Nian Nian? He gazed at me. A maniacal love surfaced on his miserable face. Nian Nian, I know everything. You didn't lie. It was those two fox demons who compelled me. They were the ones who assumed your identity. He roughly pulled the chains. Vixen and Celine screamed miserably in distress. Alexander, however, had a satisfied smile on his face. All the misunderstandings between us are because of their provocation. But it doesn't matter. We'll have many more years, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Sun Yen, don't want me. The light of hope lit up a little in his eyes with affection. I said expressionlessly, I won't go back. We don't have a future anymore. We were over when Goddess Nuwa gave you the peace offering. Phoenix picks up. Nian Nian was victimized so badly by you. How can she still forgive you? Alexander, you are a mortal who was given the love of a goddess. But you didn't cherish it. Nian Nian hid Seraphina's identity for your sake, against all odds. Just to save you in the divine ascension tribulation. Just because of the kindness of saving her life when she was young, she agreed to all of your unreasonable demands and almost used this life to repay the favor. Nowadays, how can you still have the face to beg her to return? Alexander looks grim. It's me who's sorry for Nian Nian. He carefully explained. I just love Nian Nian too much. When I was young, I promised Nian Nian that I would marry her as my queen and love only her in this life. But she disappeared. I didn't know that you were the Seraphina back then, for so many years. I was torn and agonized every night. I knew that I was in love with you, but in doing so, I betrayed Seraphina and my vows. So all I could do was lie to myself that it wasn't love, that it was just false love. Pretend that I hated you with all my heart. Pretend that I was only using you, not being true, because only then would I not be betraying my vows, and would be able to wait for you forever. In my heart, however, there was not a hint of movement. Phoenix sneered. What deep love are you pretending? 8. If you still have Nian Nian in your heart, how could you not recognize Sun Yen? If you still have a point of loyalty to Nian Nian, how could you have a harem of 3,000, night after night? Alexander, you are so cheap and disgusting. Where on earth do you get the face to beg for forgiveness here? Your love, your loyalty and steadfastness are all fake. You're just making excuses for your evil deeds. Those two fox demons pretended to be Nian Nian, broken and vicious. You knew that Nian Nian would never be like that. Yet you still deceived yourself and pretended that you were forced to hurt Sun Yen for Seraphina's sake. Why bother pretending? You're just using these opportunities to vent the malice in your heart. No, it's not like that. Alexander panicked and looked at me, kneeling on both knees and tugging at my skirt. Nian Nian, don't believe her. You believe me. I know it's wrong. I can make it up to you with everything I have. You're just angry with me, right? Our 7 years of love, can it be erased overnight? I was just mesmerized by the fox demon's charm. My heart still loves you. Moreover, we still have Yuer. His eyes reddened and his voice choked. Our Yuer is just asleep. He'll come back to life. As long as he comes back to life, we'll be able to go back to the beginning, back to our happy life as a family of 3. Nian Nian, can you bear to let Yuer lie alone in the ground? I couldn't stand it anymore and spoke coldly. Alexander, you don't deserve to mention Fabian. He was sent to the hands of the fox demon by his own father's hand, and was tortured to death by the fox demon. If I could do it all over again, I would rather have never given birth to him. At least this way, he wouldn't be screaming for his father's help even in death. Everything you are doing now to make amends is nothing but self-touching. What will it take for you to understand my true heart? Nian Nian, I really regret this. I can pay with my life. Ha 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 ha. I laughed out loud, but tears rolled down coldly. All the pain from the 7 years converged in my heart. Every bit of hurt was memorized. Because of your words, I went against the heavens, gave up my promising life, and risked being beheaded by the heavenly court to descend to earth to guard the great Shang. When you were building opulent feasting halls for your favored concubine, I was burning 100 years of cultivation to bring rain to the farmland. But for a year's harvest, you set fire to it when you were happy, Alexander. Do you think all gods are omnipotent? Do you think I deserve to be born and die for you? Because you had to make Vixen happy, I was forcibly skinned and called a bald chicken in front of everyone. Do you know how much it hurts to be without celestial wings and never be able to fly again? Do you know how disgusting it is to be humiliated by a fox demon? Do you know how much I hate it in my heart? I lost my divine core. I lost my child. And if it wasn't for Goddess Niwa, I would have lost my life. And just like that, you're going to kneel before me and beg for forgiveness. Am I so cheap and selfless in your eyes? A life for a life. How ridiculous. Your life is worth what? He hung his head and exposed his neck, submitting to my feet. But I don't care anymore. I just want to get my things back and never see you again for the rest of my life. As for whether you die or live, how mad you're going to be, it's none of my business. Zhou Hao's army was fighting in the city, shouting to the heavens. I stood on Starscraper Tower and looked down. Countless people had already submitted to Zhou Hao and stopped resisting. The great Shang has died. I am also no longer the guardian god of the great Shang. From now on, I am just Seraphina Sun Yan, not your empress, much less your beloved deceased. 9. I retrieved the divine core without taking the sinful golden elixir. Strength suddenly returned within my weak body. I sat on the back of the phoenix, which snickered coldly at Alexander's stupidity and hypocrisy, and spread its wings to leave. The sound of the phoenix chirps long above Starscraper Tower. The people looked up and cheered. The phoenix is coming. The Zhou dynasty will prosper. The tyrannical merchants will die. The destruction of the Shang is the destiny of heaven. It cannot be stopped. Anyone who resists will be killed. Alexander's gaze chased after the phoenix's departing back, not retracting his gaze until he could no longer be seen. The streaks of blood divided his face, and even his tragic smile became comical. When Zhou Hao ascended the dragon chair, Alexander set a huge fire at Starscraper Tower. The entire population of the capital saw 3 figures in the fire. The fire burned for 3 days, and the screams of the 2 fox demons lasted for 3 days. But the other figure never made a sound. The divine ascension tribulation ended with the death of the great Shang and the establishment of the Zhou dynasty. According to the words of the heavenly Tao, all the departed souls in this great tribulation will be able to go up to the list to be ordained as gods and serve in the heavenly court in the future. Alexander, however, refused to do so. When Bullhead and Horseface came to fetch him into reincarnation, he also shook his head. How can someone like me be worthy of reincarnation? Stranded on Earth these days, he finally heard how the people called him tyrant, madman, and scum. Only then did he truly see that the world he governed turned out to be full of holes long ago. I owe Sun Yan a life. And I owe Deshang an explanation. I never came down to earth again. The phoenix is often down to send auspicious. 100 years have passed. Things are not the same. When the brilliant star-picking pavilion and the country has been in ruins. Only the song of long hatred sung by the king of the Shang dynasty is still being sung by children. And Alexander has become a wandering specter, wandering around the old Shang palace where the palace walls are decaying, obsessively guarding the tomb of Prince Julian. When Phoenix spoke, I pressed down on the clouds to look down. But all I could see was the hustle and bustle of the mortal world. No longer can I see the Shang palace that was once there. The clouds rolled back. 3,000 robberies are over. I have released the past. Only the negative heart of the heart has a long hate, shall not be dissipated.